Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. I am Chase Corrington, if we haven't met before. And of course, this is the Chase Corrington YouTube channel. And it is Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. You know what that means. It's time to do the Tao now. Tuesday Tao. Reading from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day out there. Hope you're doing great, doing well. Glad to see everybody, and I appreciate all the time that you all spend, that you all spend here with me and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Lao-tzu and all the wonderful authors and poets in the wisdom of the ages, which is sitting right there next to me, as well as Jumanji in the background. That's interesting. I got some of the plants growing, ladies and gentlemen. Got a couple peppers. It's always fun to grow a few plants every now and then throughout the year. It's probably even funner if you have some kind of indoor greenhouse ability to grow plants throughout the winter months. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something? But today, but today, ladies and gentlemen, living in simplicity. And so maybe that's why I took a nice and simple beginning there to just say some simple words. And this comes to us from the 37th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Living in simplicity is what Wayne Dyer titled his extrapolation on the ideas that come through the 37th verse in the Tao Te Ching. And so let's dive right into this, because as I'm sure you've experienced through this series, and if this is your first time here, then thank you very much, and I'm sure you'll get something out of this. But each one of these lessons is powerful, and it goes in a different direction than expected. So let's dive right into, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the 37th verse of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao does nothing, but leaves nothing undone. Probably one of my favorite lines of the entire Tao, ladies and gentlemen. Wayne Dyer said one time his son came to being a spiritual Taoist. And so he said, every time I would tell my son to clean his room, he said, the Tao does nothing, but leaves nothing undone. Now that's just a joke, but it's one of those paradoxical lines and things that comes to us with great wisdom, but it's tough for the common, our common thinking procedure to take in and understand, because it is that pair of opposites. Now I'll go through the whole verse here. Sorry for interrupting. That's just probably one of my favorite lines. The Tao does nothing, but leaves nothing undone. If powerful men could center themselves in it, the whole world would be transformed by itself in its natural rhythms. When life is simple, pretenses fall away. Our essential nature shines through. Our essential natures shine through. By not wanting, there is calm, and the world will straighten itself. When there is silence, one finds the anchor of the universe within oneself. And that is the 37th verse of the Tao Te Ching. I repeated one line there, which was our essential natures shine through. I said it the first time, our essential nature shines through. And I think it could go either way. But this is the point that is being said when the line says the Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. It's like there is this way of simplicity and flowing. Sorry for the clearing the throat there. There's this way of simplicity and letting it be, or maybe even though you're doing your process, you're like, it's tough to say, but it's described well here when it says if powerful men could center themselves in it, you could just let it be, then the whole world would be transformed, not by the works and the actions of all of us, but by itself in its natural rhythms. And so maybe it's the interrupting of these natural rhythms that, even though we're doing things, it seems like we're doing nothing. See, a lot of people, when they think about doing nothing, they're like, oh, you're literally just sitting there doing not a thing at all. But I think what's being described here when the Tao says doing nothing, centering yourself in it, by itself, in its natural rhythms, it would be transformed. It's like there's a natural way, a natural flow, a process, a harmony. And see, this is the two words that always come up for me when it comes to talking about the Tao and trying to describe this great force, whether it be God, universe, source. I almost called it universe. Universal source, or divine organizing intelligence, whatever it is that does all of this, but leaves, it seems like it's doing nothing, but at the same time, nothing is being left undone. The two words that seem to describe this thing, for me, always seem to be harmony and nature. And when it is left alone, there is a certain harmony in the processes of nature. And so if we can, when life is simple, it says pretenses fall away. Our essential natures shine through. So maybe when we're so complicated and we have so many pretenses and, things that we're labeling and structuring and trying to control and everything it is that we're so used to in, life nowadays, when we can release these, then our essential nature can shine through. Now let's dive into, because it's always a different direction than I expected, and it's always incredible and powerful. Life, I was thinking transformational, life-changing in a transformational kind of way. Psychological transformation, ladies and gentlemen. What we're doing here, if you haven't heard me say it 1,000 times already, is we're trying to use this wisdom of the ages, wisdom of the Tao, to increase the quality of our lives. Because doesn't everybody want a higher quality life? I mean, just putting it simply, as we're talking about living in simplicity here today, doesn't everybody just simply want a higher quality of life, or more happiness, more peace, more contentment? And so that's not something that just pops into your life, as is everything else in our lives. Once you begin to see how you create your life, which is another thing we've been going over a lot through these series, which is one of my favorite topics, becoming a manifestor, or creating your life, or having a co-creative ability with this force that we were just describing with the Tao. It's obvious then, when you begin to accept that you have an ability to influence your life from a creative perspective. See, that's one of the biggest hurdles for most people, is like, okay, really? You're telling me I can do this? I can have an influence on my life? And for some people, it'll be like, yes, obviously, that's what's been going on the whole time. For other people, like, no, everything just happens to me. And so there's one, the first perspective is very powerful. The last one I just mentioned, there is no power, because everything outside of you, you have given your power to. But when you bring it back in, say, I'm the one attracting all of this, or going in these directions and those directions, which lead to these kind of things and those kind of things. And there's a different way for us to think about our life and have a greater level of power, and then in turn begin to increase the quality of our life, be able to enjoy it more, which is, I think, one of the most important things overall. It's like everybody needs a higher quality of life, regardless if they're going through things and they're learning, and that's part of the process, learning and growing. But if we can, where I'm going. I'm just rambling. All right. Living in simplicity, ladies and gentlemen. Is these topics are very important and deep, and so I enjoy rambling in them. So don't take light of them when I say that I'm just rambling, because it is important. Wayne Dyer begins here by saying, I call this bite your tongue, zip your lips. He calls this the bite your tongue, zip your lips verse of the Tao Te Ching. The paradox inherent in the two opening lines intrigues me enormously, Wayne Dyer says, as well as it does me. It's one of my favorite lines. The Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. Just imagine what we're being told to consider in this verse. Do nothing and everything gets done. See, sounds great. But obviously, it contradicts all that you and I have been taught. Doing nothing in our culture suggests a lazy, unsuccessful, and quite possibly worthless individual. So for a moment here, let's modify the way we think about living. See, this is what I'm talking about. The way we think about living simply and doing nothing. Because there's different ways to think about those things. Wayne Dyer continues by saying, of all the troubles that are reported in the media, including wars, terrorism, famine, hatred, crime, and disease, and whatever else you can think of, how many are the result of interfering with the natural unfolding of creation? Ask yourself that. You might find that a lot more of the troubles that we face is because of us interfering. That was my own interjection. Wayne Dyer continues, how much of the essential nature of ourselves and our planet is able to shine through? And, find what would Earth be like if governments didn't meddle in everyone's lives? These are deep, powerful questions, ladies and gentlemen. What if no one could be perceived as an enemy? Could there be a world where groups of people never got together to control others in order to invade or conquer? How about where oceans and mountains and natural resources, air, plants, and animals, were respected and allowed to flourish without any interference? Now, this is an entirely different world that's being described here, but it's important to think of these kind of great ideas that we can reach towards. That such a place, Wayne Dyer continues, of simplicity and lack of interference existed. It would be acting exactly as the Tao does, doing nothing and yet leaving nothing undone. Now shift out of this highly imaginative scenario, come back down to earth and begin to reconsider what's meant in this passage by the concept of powerful individuals transforming the world. When they're interfering with natural rhythms, they ultimately create difficulties that are inconsistent with the harmony, with the Tao. Try to visualize great leaders who are instead centered in the Tao. They bite their tongues and zip their lips rather than act in a hostile way. And they refuse to participate in activities that cause harm to anything on the planet. Now, I mean, this just seems common sense, right? But when I was going to say money, but it's more like value in a, you know what I mean? When there is profit to be gained of any form, it's tough to remember these ways of great harmony that are being described here. And so it's really deep when you try to, because it's so easy for the mind to say, yeah, and come have that subconscious part of the mind going, yeah, but what, but this doesn't work and that can't be possible and all of these things. And that's the important thing here in doing all of this stuff, changing our thoughts, changing our life, is the reprogramming of the subconscious mind. Because the subconscious mind is always going to have things popping in. It's part of the reason why we meditate, if we do, is to try to see that subconscious mind, what to do, it just keeps going. And then you begin to recognize it and detach yourself from all the random things that pop in. And so I think it's important for me in this process of trying to learn all of this philosophy, that can be very deep sometimes, in order to play with that subconscious devil's advocate and, continue to ask both sides for yourself. Because I think that's where true learning comes from, is when you can begin to, debate the questions for yourself and be open-minded. And because you don't really get to true understanding if you don't debate with yourself about these kind of ideas. I think it's when you go through some kind of a, I would just call it even if you're not like meditating, I would call it a meditative process or a contemplative process in order to come to wisdom. Because there's knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, and then there is wisdom. And I know that there's a difference between those things, just like believing and knowing. There's a difference between those things, ladies and gentlemen. And so Wayne Dyer understands, and he comes back by saying, yes, all of these great, wonderful things that we were talking about here, visualizing this utopian world where it is like what was described. He says, yes, this may be a fantasy, but it is not an impossibility when you think like a sage and are centered in the Tao. And so, that's the mind battle going on there. It's like, the mind's like, oh, this is impossible, we just can't ever get there. And then the other part of the mind's like, but it's not technically impossible if, we can come to this point. If we can think like the sage and center ourselves in what is being, titled in this version of this universal philosophy as the Tao. The 37th verse of the Tao Te Ching, Wayne Dyer continues, can also help you change the way you look at yourself. And I think that's really where it begins, ladies and gentlemen. Wayne Dyer continues, let's say that you're accustomed to equating the idea of success with a take charge kind of person. So you have a specific version of what success is from your perspective. He goes, you believe that this individual allocates responsibilities to others because he or she is a leader who's willing and able to tell others what to do and how to do it. Well, this view is completely out of harmony with the Tao, which does nothing and leaves nothing undone. As you alter the way you look at your own power, that's what I was talking about earlier, the internal power, internally directed versus externally directed. When you look at your own power and success, you'll begin to replace strong desires with calm contentment. And that's so important in this process of changing your thoughts about how we look at the world. As we begin to have surprising fits of calm contentment. And it is truly amazing. When you start to allow your true nature, which is the anchor of the universe, to shine through you, you'll recognize that the way you look at things has absolutely changed. I've used this simplicity lesson, Wayne says, in dealing with all of my children. When I step in and tell them how, I create resistance. But when I bite my tongue, zip my lips, and retreat into silence, they not only figure it out themselves, but a calm energy replaces their frustration. That probably too, I think he said he had 9 kids. That's a difficult process. Or it could be a very simple process. See, maybe it's how you think about it, ladies and gentlemen. And he goes, I've learned that my kids know how to be. They too have this anchor of the universe within them. They too are centered in the do nothing and get everything done Tao. They too have an essential nature that they're listening to. I love that bit. Try to listen to your essential nature sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, and see what it says. As I've gotten more adept at trusting this, not only for my children, Wayne says, but for everyone I encounter, I am more peaceful. And guess what? More, not less, seems to get accomplished. Now, this is, I remember one time there was these, those clay pots. There was a group of them stuck together, and trying really hard was not working. And it was just like you had to be really slow and smooth and easy and twist, and then they perfectly came apart. And it was this example of what was just being described there, of how the much more gets done when you're in this calm energy, like this non-interfering flowing state. It's tough to describe, but more things get done than when you're trying to force all the things to get done. And I'm sure you'd have to be in a spiritual mindset and a philosophical perspective to really get what that is saying, because most people will be like, what? You're telling me, the devil's advocate once again. It's fun to play because then it really makes you think more about these kind of philosophies. And then you can get to a point of true understanding and begin to put it into practice into your own life and test these things and really see, does it work? Is he just BSing there and it's Lao-tzu and this 2,000-year-old wisdom somehow just stuck around because there's a bunch of people that just like it? Or is it actually something that can have a huge influence and impact in changing the quality of my life? These are good questions. Now, Wayne Dyer continues, leaves nothing undone. This calm contentment, the way you look at things become changed. Everything seems to get done. More peaceful. So the contentment, the peace, the calm, the accomplishing things on time without problems that used to be a suffering, occurrence or occasion because of our own interference with this flowing ability. So he goes, guess what? Not more, not less seems to get accomplished on time and without problems that used to be all these problems used to surface because of our own interference. Change the way you think about the entire idea of success and power. For this isn't the result of an obsessive accomplishment and continually following directions. Start living in a world that works far better with less meddling. And I'll add less forcing, less striving, more allowing, more arriving. You understand that not everyone will stop instructing others, Wayne Dyer continues, and it's important to have this open perspective. While knowing reality is here, we can also achieve a greater reality for our own selves and the lives of those around us that we can influence. You understand that not everyone will stop instructing others and just allow the Tao to unfold, of course. But we, us, the sages here, the learners on our journey, can be an observer. We can be an observer, ladies and gentlemen, watching others tap into their power by centering themselves. So look, it's another thing when we're going in our lives, seek, I said that weird, but I was going to say look, but seek, but also, it's like look out for these occurrences of examples of the Tao and people accessing it accidentally, because that's a thing too. People do these things without knowing they're doing it. And when you do know it, you're like, wow, that was it. That was it. And then you go, maybe that's how to do it. Or, when you're practicing it yourself, you also become the mirror for other people in the world. And they go, man, how is this person just so centered all the time? Even though, yesterday was the most hectic day and there was 147 orders and, we had to do all of this stuff. And it's like, there was a way to do nothing and leave nothing undone. Hope you're getting this, ladies and gentlemen. If you're getting value, be sure to subscribe. Now, because we'll continue to do this every week until we're done with this, and we'll go on to the next one and the next one, and I'll be talking about my own thoughts, and we'll be learning and growing, and in turn changing our lives, ladies and gentlemen, getting to a much higher quality of life. So change the way you think about the entire idea of success and power for yourself. You go start living in a world that works far better with less meddling. Become the observer and notice others tap into this power for themselves. Here is what Lao-tzu suggests for making this verse become a daily reality. So more, trying to get more practical here. Cultivate your unique natural self. This is what we can do. Number one, practice allowing your essential nature to shine by not enforcing judgments on yourself that were imposed by others. It's a key practice. Remind yourself that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be better. You don't have to win. And see, this is one of the things that will get us in settings where there is a little bit of competition. It's like we're always striving to be better and to win, because if we don't, we feel like we're less than. But remembering that you don't have to do anything. And then you're like, oh, yeah. And if somebody else wins, then that's beautiful. And it doesn't make you any lesser, because you come from in here, not what's going on out here. And the peace and comfort, it's like surprising comfort. You're like, wow, this feels good. Sorry, I thought that needs to be said. Center and cultivate your natural self. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to win. You don't have to be number 1 or number 27 or any number. Give yourself permission, ladies and gentlemen, to just be. To just be. Stop interfering with your unique natural being. Lighten the burden you carry to be productive, wealthy, and successful in the eyes of others, and replace it with an inner assertion that allows you to access the Tao. Affirm, I am centered in the Tao. I trust that I am able to straighten myself out, and so is the world. I retreat into silence, knowing that all is well. Number 2 here, expect to see the essential nature of others by remaining silent. See, that's the part where it's like, stay open and watch for occasions when you will see others tapping into their power by centering themselves. And expect to see it. He goes, deliberately bite your tongue and zip your lips at the precise moment that you're tempted to get involved in the lives of those around you. Become aware of your inclination to tell others, particularly your family members, how they should be conducting their lives. I mean, imagine the peace and the elimination of years of resentment that would come from this process. It's like, stop telling loved ones and family members how they should be conducting their lives. Even if you hold off for a few moments before you begin to go back into the old process, you will notice a great difference. Before you butt into someone else's business, you are on your way to allowing those around you to find their anchor of the universe within themselves. Because if you found yours and you're fine, I mean, at least hopefully a decent amount of the time after all the philosophy we've gone through and practice of putting this into action in our lives, if you're somewhat connected to your anchor, ladies and gentlemen, then begin to allow those around you to find their anchor of the universe within themselves. This new discipline of resisting your habit to get involved by pausing before interrupting will enable you to see how capable everyone truly is when they're in the energy field of someone who allows rather than forces, allows rather than dictates, in any other way you want to say that. Beautiful, beautiful. If you're getting value, once again, smash the like button, consider subscribing, leave me a comment. Let me know if you're getting something out of this. And finally, at the end of each one of these verses, ladies and gentlemen, or chapters from Dyer, he gives us a way that we can really put this into action in our life. You know, the two things before this are good ideas as well, but this is the reason that you should get this book for yourself to put on your own bookshelf, because everybody needs a bookshelf. Because of these kind of reference materials, if you got your shelf full of nonsense, then there's not a lot of purpose there unless you enjoy good entertainment. That's a whole nother story, and I like some good stories. But life-changing reference material is important just as well. And so at the end of each of these short chapters, what Dyer gives to us is do the Tao now. It's about a little, this much of a page. And it's a good reason to have this for yourself, for reference on what, things that we could try to do through our lives. Because it only takes 40 seconds to read this little do the Tao now at the end of each of these. And sometimes we don't have time in our life to read a whole chapter or a paragraph or whatever it be. And so, just trying to simplify. So right here, not in the book there, but below the video itself, there's a thing that expands the description, and I've got the book linked there in the description. Take you right to Amazon, and you can pick it up for yourself, or maybe try to find it at a local bookstore as well, which is where I found this one. Actually, I got lucky. I was so pumped. I was like, yes, Dyer. And I was like, oh, the Tao. And I was excited. So here we are now, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, halfway through, talking about do the Tao now, because it's Tuesday Tao, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow is Wednesday Wisdom. So to finish up here, about this 37th verse of the Tao Te Ching and simplicity, the idea of allowing and not forcing, and connecting to the source through simplicity. I don't know, I have to think of the title after this. Do the Tao now, Wayne says. Print or copy the first two lines of this 37th verse, which is my favorite of the Tao. The Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. Then read these words repeatedly until you've committed them to memory. Then go, this is fun, for a 30-minute walk and take note of their truth. Look at the nature. So you remember, nature and harmony are the Tao, from my perspective. The air, the sky, the clouds, the grass, the wind, and the flowers. Nothing natural that you see is undone, but nothing at the same time is taking place to work it all out. It is all accomplished by the truth of these words. I'm reminded, Wayne says, of a 13th century poet by Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, remember our favorite, the Sufi poet. He's reminded of a 13th century poet called Nibble at Me, which applies perfectly to this section of the Tao Te Ching. The poem goes, nibble at me, don't gulp me down. How often is it you have a guest in your house who can fix everything? Let your all-knowing guest, this is Dyer here again, let your all-knowing guest, this Tao, this source, this anchor of the universe that we're connected to, that we can center ourselves in, fix things for you while you live naturally. Boom. Boom to wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. That was fantastic. That was more upbeat or more happy, that was a happier, calmer feeling one, not so intense. I think I get kind of intense sometimes, and then other times it's kind of a, more of a negative subject, talking about the negative things that we go through and that we have to deal with. But I love a bit of calm, serenity, simplicity, and great wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. Great wisdom. Next week, next Tuesday, will be the 38th verse of the Tao Te Ching. It's a longer one. I'm looking forward to that. It's called, by Wayne Dyer, Living Within Your Own Nature. That sounds exciting to me, because we were just talking about connecting to our own essential nature and seeing it in other people and in nature itself, and being able to connect to God or connect to the source, to Tao, by living in this simplicity. The great line, the Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everybody that spends time here with me and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Lao-tzu and all the wonderful authors and poets in the wisdom of the ages. And remember, the reason we're here is to create a higher quality of life for not only ourselves, but so that we can begin to create a higher quality for the lives of those around us. And it even talked about it in that reading today. And so continue, ladies and gentlemen, to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment. Continue to seek to discover the hidden wisdom of the ages and begin to make happiness the way, the process that we bring to life. Because happiness is just that, ladies and gentlemen. It's something, it's an activity that we do. It's not a result that we get from doing activity. So if we can begin to make it the way, then the goal that we were always striving for becomes irrelevant, because we're already there. And then the entire journey is wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. I love that little rant. It's one of my favorites. Thank you so much once again. I appreciate and love everybody, and so glad that you spend your time here with me. So glad to see you all. And I'll be back tomorrow for more wisdom of the ages.